Good morning, Tim.
Good morning.
So today is an early morning start, but you had a very late finish last night, and that's because you were at Buckingham Palace or somewhere?
Windsor Castle, yeah.
Collecting your gong. Can we have a quick look at your gong?
And
for those,
show and tell.
Yeah. So sorry for those who are listening on podcast. Let's just say it's an impressive MBE.
Yeah.
And of course, we'll pick that up a bit later on as to, what led to you being at Windsor Palace. But that's, listen, brilliant. Well, thank you for taking that time. We've known each other for a while. You've supported my events, so thank you very much for that. But we also spoke right in the middle of COVID. Right in the middle. And I just thought it'd be quite...
In the eye of the storm.
Eye of the storm. And so I thought it'd be quite good to catch up on what's happened since.
Yeah.
But more importantly, just understanding family businesses, how you run one, what you do outside of business that can help you become a better leader. And of course, we'll pick up the charity work for which you were recognised yesterday, and congratulations again. So let's kick off with Hollywood Monster. So your large-scale print. How did you end up sitting where you are now? How did you end up? Because your father started it, is that right?
No, well, me and my father started it together, actually.
Okay.
So my father was made redundant, and at the time I was converting my loft, or my mum and dad's loft, into a space where I could set my own little printing business up.
Okay.
So doing letterheads, compliment slips. Remember those?
Yes.
It was going to be just a very small thing. I've always had that entrepreneurial sort of flair as a kid, and always wanted to be like my dad's employer. Actually, he was like my shining star that I always wanted to be.
Right.
And he gave me the hunger and the desires, and obviously the fruit that's generated from being a successful entrepreneur. So I'd already started converting the loft space. Anyway, my dad had the awful news, which hit him quite hard because he's always been employed. He's always been a manual worker, shall I say. Started off in the farming, then into JCB driving. So he was always at the cutting edge of sort of getting his hands dirty, rolling his sleeves up. And so he'd never ran a business at all. I'd done a little bit of not university, but college training, running a business, and it was just in me to want to do it. And really, that's where I started. I sort of naturally was the business side of Hollywood Signs, as it was then. Yeah. But my dad was the one that got his hands dirty.
So that's interesting. Recently, I interviewed Joe Foster, Reebok, and he was working for his dad, and then left because his dad and he diverged in terms of taking the business. So interestingly, your father started it with you, although he had clearly a role. How did you find working with your father? And generally people in family business, how did you find that?
I was a member of the Academy of Chief Executive actually for 3 years. I'm not sure if the organisation is still going, but actually one of the best things that I ever did in terms of training. You can go to university, you can go to college and learn MBAs and that sort of thing, which are all great. But actually learning off people that have been there and done it is actually far more valuable in my experience. Yeah. And the people around the table are people actually well known in Birmingham. It's unfair to name their names, but I learnt off the very best actually, and I think it's just so it's so important to learn off them, and I've used it to hopefully.
But how did you get on with your dad? Was it easy? Yeah. Was it sort of your roles were quite clear?
Yes, the people that are in the room, they know the story inside out. It was the board that you can't afford, as it were, and they gave me lots of advice because, of course, some of them come from family businesses. Yeah. To answer the question, it was very tough at times. My dad had a very different style, leadership style, literally 2B2, get people up the wall type. Type, whereas I'm very different to that. But my dad was very much he measured people whether they were sweating. And I measure people their output, you know, in terms of what's their objective.
Yeah.
And so it was very different. We clashed very, very much. And it did test, you know, the family unit. My poor mum, she's always the one that used to get us from both sides. I'd go crying to my mum, and of course my dad used to go home moaning and shouting about myself and the clash of two personalities, really. But it was tough, but I wouldn't change it for the world. My dad, as you know, is no longer with us.
Yeah, sure.
We lost him 4 years ago. He taught me how not to be a business partner quite often. And you know what? That's actually as good a, you know, that is as important as teaching you how to do things as well, I think. And I wouldn't be the person I am today, obviously, if it wasn't for my dad. But he taught us one thing that just shine out from the rest of the qualities is you've got to work hard. Nothing comes to you in this life easily, unless, of course, you drop onto something that you're very, very fortunate or lucky. But 99.5% of businesses is all about working hard and putting the business before family life quite often.
And for those who are embarking on running a business with family members or are in the middle of it, were you able to separate work from home, or was that, did it naturally just spill over and you have to accept that's just the way of life?
Well, it is definitely the way of life, and it was very much. But it's also, you've got to remember, I was 21 years of age, and you have a very different view on life altogether, I think, at 21 than you do at 51. I put everything into my business. And my view at the time was, well, I'm young enough, I'll enjoy life later on. But of course, it was what I wanted to do. This was my life, working. And I'm not just talking about working 7 or 8 hours a day. I'm talking working 12, 14-hour days, 6 and sometimes 7 days a week.
That's right.
So I had children at a young age. If I'm being brutally honest with you, I can't remember them as being small babies. I was out working all the time. So there is a cost, without a doubt. And anybody going into business has got to be prepared to make some sacrifices. I'm not saying don't see their kids growing up, because, of course, that's something I do regret. But we've got a great relationship, father and son relationship. So there's no long-term damage done. But, of course, it did come at a cost, not having the memories, only changing nappies at sort of 11 o'clock at night, in the middle of the night, you know, which isn't quality time, really.
Interesting. And a final comment just on the family business aspect before we move on is, how did your members of staff cope with a family business? Do they find it a little more difficult than people in a pecking order? Does that make sense? So
well, it's probably, I'm the wrong person to ask, I think. The business is still family. So my business partners now is my sister's husband and his brother. So it's still it's not one family but two families now. So it's still a very much family, and the values in this business run as if it is a large family. Bit of a cliche, but it really is a family business. And actually, I'm involved in other businesses, but usually the family businesses are the ones that have really got that DNA, and that's real nice. There's no corporate BS. It's
and you're all going in the same direction.
And we are all going in the same direction, and that's really important. Of course, in any business, if your leading team values differ, then of course, and differ, from one end of the spectrum to the other, then it causes problems. But we've all got a similar value set, and of course that runs then throughout the business and the culture of the business.
Just before we move on to COVID, let's just explain exactly what you do. So it's large scale print. So we're talking huge printing format. Is that right? Just a bit about the business.
Right. So the business is two businesses in one.
Okay.
We merged Hollywood Signs, which was a signage business which predominantly focused on property signage, property marketing signage, so construction, developers signage. In the last recession, 2008, the financial crash, that business really struggled. Okay. And one of the learnings from it, albeit we were very much, our USP and our very much focus was the property industry. One of the learnings from that is that you need to spread more eggs in more baskets, not just one sector. So we started a print business up which served many sectors, and this was the wide format. 2009, we merged them together. Okay. To reduce overheads, and they fit nicely together.
They do.
So we're not just wide formats. However, the way technology has gone, majority of signage these days is produced in large format print process. But of course, there's still the metal bashing, the steel fabrications, the electricians. There's still many other trades that dovetail into signage and graphics. So, in real terms, we're a signage and graphics business that does super wide format, but super wide format in the exhibition and events industry is where we know each other from.
That's right.
Is a it's a big part of our business now, and obviously the pandemic has completely destroyed that industry. Well, closed that industry. It's knocked us again. So not only was we affected the last recession because of the financial crash, we've been hit again because of this one. Now, all businesses suffer, one way or another through recessions, and the pandemic, unfortunately, affected both of ours in a negative kind of way.
So let's look at COVID now. Then you've led on to that. As I said, we spoke right in the middle of it, and as someone who runs events, listen, we came to a standstill. And of course, your major customers were people in events, and I remember you saying, you said every morning it was difficult. You'd get out of bed and you think, well, I have to be positive because everybody at the workplace will look to you for leadership. And so, did you find your leadership style had to change? You had to be a lot more different than you were prior to COVID, if that makes sense.
Yeah, right. So, family business. Quite often what comes with family businesses is taking a long time to make decisions. Yeah. So sitting on the fence. So there was lots of staff within the business that we had no time to procrastinate. Yeah. We had to make decisions, take costs out of the business to save the business.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, one thing that was, looking back, what COVID did to us, it gave us time. It gave us time to reflect, time to think about where our overheads are, and what's really important to our business, and actually the market. So one of the things that it did teach me, and of course it's in every MBA, is look at yourself, look at your market, look at look how you're going to stand out from the crowd. And of course, if there's less food, you've got to stand more chance of getting that. And in our industry, it's very much that. Most markets were closed. So we had to look at ourselves to see how we stand out head and shoulders above our competition.
And what about you as a person? How do you think you changed? Or did you?
Well, I'm not so sure I actually changed, but I think one lesson for me is, as a businessman, as an entrepreneur, if you've got a decision to make, then make it. Don't sit on the fence, don't wait, because the cost of not making a decision is far higher and far greater. Yeah. And of course, let's be honest, everybody, we're all in it together, and having to make people redundant, as sad and as hard as it was, everyone respected that decision, because of a need to. And we're all very resilient people, aren't we? And I think, that's one thing that it sort of made me realise, we are quite resilient as a business and as people.
Yeah, it was interesting because at the time there was a lot of press around you because you were really advocating for support for the events industry.
Yeah,
you've just been
which
absolutely decimated.
We didn't get much support. However, one thing that I'm really grateful of is the furlough scheme.
Yeah.
I've read lots of people knocking it, criticising it, but it saved our business. And, you know, at the end of the day, should we say, we are a client of the revenue, you know, and had they have not supported us, we would not be paying our corporation tax and our PAYE today. Yeah. So it was important for the government to keep us alive, and many other businesses out there. And we had nearly £1 million worth of furlough support into this business, but that's because we needed it. You know, most of our staff were at home, not working. So had we have not had it, I wouldn't be sat in this newly refurbed office now.
Well, it was interesting because the stats show that the furlough did work, because now we don't have the high unemployment everybody expected.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it was a brave move at the time, and I think it was a well-documented move, and I think it's worked well. And you're absolutely right. You're not alone. There's a lot of businesses that are now around today.
Yeah.
Employing people.
The first scheme was great, and it was. I'm not going back on what I've just said. No. But of course, many of our staff were paid a lot more than the cap that the furlough scheme produced. So overall, in that nearly 2-year period, cost us 1.4 million, I think it was. Mm. So that's come out of our balance sheet. You know, so as a business, we're a lot less financially stable than we were before. We've got some debt around us, but we're still here. Yeah. And that's the important thing, you know. And one of our mantras for our business is, you know, what's the value of a client's lifetime, not just in one order. And it goes in this basis. You know, we want to be here in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, and you know, and the next generation that will be running the business, we want it to be there for them. So it's you know, the furlough is give us that, albeit we've got some debt around ourselves, but at least we're still trading, and we're trading strong, and almost stronger than we were before, because we've come out of the pandemic a lot more leaner, and the ability to make money is a lot easier.
I've noticed, certainly since we last came, but I did notice it before, but it's a bit more pronounced, a lot of green around the place. So you seem to be chasing or pursuing a green agenda. I know there was I know you're making sustainability at the sort of core of your operation. So I suppose the question I would ask, is it sustainable? In other words, by using certain materials, are you now suddenly a bit more expensive than everyone? Or does it give you a competitive advantage?
No, so sustainability, or ESG, what everyone's talking about now, which I'm well into. Because it really sort of fits like a glove with me, ESG, and what it all stands for. But the sustainability arm, we've been looking at sustainable materials for years, even before the last recession. And the reason being is because the majority of materials that we use are made of plastics. Okay. And as we all know, anything going into a landfill will not degrade for many, many, many years. That's right. And that, you know, doesn't sit right with myself. We don't know where the majority ends up, but I guarantee it probably does end up in a landfill. So we as a business, during the pandemic, it gave us a little bit more time to do a little bit more research. That's what I'm talking about at the time. And we're the first business in the UK to come out, this is in our sector, to say we're banning PVC. Okay. So at the end of this year, we will not have PVC bought into this business, whether a client wants it or not. Now, of course, that gives us a few challenges because, you know, we've replaced most materials, but some still aren't replaced. Now, of course, if there isn't a material on the market come the end of this year, then, you know, we're going to have to reassess. But we are doing all the stretch tests, strength tests on the materials, and 95% of our materials that up to now have been replaced with non-PVC versions. And the sort of the green element to that is just phenomenal. You know, it's replacing materials that will degrade very quickly in landfill, and also can be incinerated, can be burnt. PVC can't, you see, because of the toxic gases that it emits. So that gives us a strong USP against our, you know, and I'll put the pandemic down to that. That gives us that edge. And of course, everyone else is going to follow, and rightly so. Yeah. but they can't pinch the fact that we're the first, you know, and that's really quite powerful as a business.
But did it make you more expensive?
No. So we've been working with the mills, China and Germany, where most of the stuff comes from. And actually, we've got the materials at pretty much the same cost. It's about 5% more expensive to us, but we're maintaining our costs. But dare I say it, our industry is about cost, but we're not known to be the cheapest. You know, it's all about value added, and our materials, our products, we believe, we got the Rolls-Royce machines, our people are what makes a Hollywood monster, and you've got to pay for that. And we're never wanting to be the cheapest, and nor should we.
Your stuff's good.
Say again?
Good. Your stuff is good.
Say again?
Your stuff is good.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good, high quality stuff.
But it comes at a price, you know, and actually everyone's got a moral responsibility as well to be buying not just cheap, but buying correct, you know, and making sure the materials, you know, the impact they're having on the planet.
Yeah, we ordered some stuff recently for an exhibition. It was strong stuff. It's good stuff. Excellent. Now, I must admit, one of your strong points, and I'm wondering how you just mentioned in your customer service. How important has that been in what is a competitive, price-driven industry? Yeah,
it's massive. I mean, our proximity to the NEC helps in the exhibition industry. But we're working 7 days a week. So one of the first things that we did coming out of the pandemic, where everybody was struggling for work, we said, right, we're going to put on a 7 day a week, 24-hour service. Now you might think, well, why does anybody want something at 2 o'clock in the morning? Well, I guarantee you they do. And the fact that we're just up the road from the NEC gives us that ability to, you know, for the exhibitions that are on. And it's always last minute when you need something. Yeah. And just being able to, you know, customers phoning us up at 10 o'clock at night, we will answer the phone. And that is really massive in a service-driven industry.
That's right.
Majority of our competitors, you won't get them to answer the phone after 5:05. That's not good enough. You know, so we are all about service and customer service.
I can vouch for that in Leicester. I was calling. We were speaking at about 6 o'clock. People were taking calls. Just before we move on, you mentioned the word ESG, and for those who don't know, E stands for the environmental, S is for the social, and G for the governance. So it is currently sort of a hot topic.
It's the new CSR.
Yes,
but it's been expanded.
Now, people in the Midlands and certainly Birmingham know you for more than just Hollywood Monster, and going back to the start of the interview, we talked about you picking up an MBE, and that was for your charity work. So a little bit about Love Brum and certainly the Birmingham City Football Club ladies team. But I suppose the question I want to ask before you tell me what those two ventures were about is, why not just stick to business? What made you and led you to do things outside of the business, which did and does take up a lot of your time?
I guess, well, the charitable reasoning. As a kid, we used to be members of the Caravan Club, and I was the vice chair of the junior committee.
Okay.
It means nothing to anybody unless they used to go caravanning, but basically that was charity. That was raising money, and that was raising money for cancer research, actually, because many of my family have died of the dreadful disease, and it was something that's quite close to our family. You know, I wanted to raise money for that, and I used to love doing it. Now, Love Brum was set up because I felt that a lot of the large charities get all the money and the small ones don't, and me, Dave McLean. We know each other because of Dave McLean. Yeah. Me, Dave McLean, and PJ. We got our heads together in a pub actually, over a beer, and said, and also on a bike ride, you know, what does Birmingham need? And Love Brum came out of it really, which is an organisation that gives spotlight to the small organisations of the city, giving them small grants. but they're volunteer-led, so the small grants actually go a long way.
Yeah, they do.
And Love Brum is basically that umbrella organisation that's grant making to all these really cool volunteer-led organisations of the city that are making the city a better place. And let's face it, Birmingham, as awesome as it is hurting in many places. And Love Brum gives that little bit of hope. And also civic pride back to the city, because Birmingham has suffered with its civic pride, I believe, in the years gone by. And just just reminding people how cool our city is and what good people live in it.
And often people forget when they read the headlines. They think entrepreneurs don't give back, but entrepreneurs do give back, and you're a shining star of giving back to the city.
Well, it comes back to moral responsibility as well. You know what I mentioned earlier. And one of my moral responsibilities is to give back to people less fortunate. And that's not just money, quite often time. Yeah. And it makes me feel good. It motivates me. One of my values is all about giving back. And I think any entrepreneur I'd recommend to do that. Because it's not just about me, it's the staff as well. This is what the staff think, and we're all built in the same kind of way. Yeah. We all want to help each other, and certainly Brummies do. And if you want to build a great culture in your business, then charity is a great foundation to build on.
I think that's an excellent point you made there. The culture can pick up if they know you. Yeah. And what about Birmingham City ladies team? Now that's a classic example of you understanding the importance of diversity and inclusion, because you went outside the norm, if that makes sense. Most 100%. People gravitate towards...
100%. I remember the board meeting, came back and said that I wanted to be the shirt sponsor and sponsor Birmingham City Ladies. And they went, ladies, do they play football? Honestly, it was... No, I'm talking 10 years ago.
Yeah, of course.
I got involved in that. And you know what? One of the best parts of my life, actually, it pulled me away from my business. So many owner-managed businesses, what holds that business back is usually the owner. It made me pull back from the business, and you know what? Everyone steps up into that vacuum that's left, and the business was better off for it. But actually, me personally, I was better off for it as well, because it took me out of my comfort zone. Standing. I remember the first meet, standing up singing a song in with all the team members. We were in Sweden. That really did take me out of my comfort zone, and so did the whole experience. I learnt such a lot. I do have an ambition to run a football club one day.
Nice.
Ladies football gave me that. It was an apprenticeship, really, but of course, with all the business experience that I've got, I think puts me in a good position in order to do that. I do love the sport, but I also believe it's run quite badly as a whole. I'm generally speaking now, because some of the clubs are run very well, but it's those that are very successful. Honestly, winning the FA Cup was just something like me standing in the Royal Box in the final of the FA Cup. We lost to Man City, unfortunately, but I was stood next to the chairman of the FA, handing the FA Cup over.
Nice.
A little bittersweet, because one of the girls receiving the cup was a girl I'd just sold to Man City the week before. But do you know what? It was something that I was very proud of and will live with me forever, and it's definitely up here with the MBE. Having the FA Cup in the house when we won it. The night after we won, I put it underneath the TV and watched it again on replay. That's quite special.
And interesting that 10 years ago you saw the potential, which is now huge. We see it on TV. But
it's a different game now.
Yeah, little did you think.
It's a different game now to what it was.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time trying to encourage the media to pick it up.
Yeah.
And also the corporates to sponsor it.
Yeah.
we were working on a budget at the time, from memory, about £500,000 a year. You couldn't run a ladies' team in the top league for that sort of money now. It's at least doubled. But the game has changed, but it's still got a long way to go to the men's compared to the men's game. So the opportunities there are quite massive still. But a lot of the big clubs now have got ladies' teams.
Yeah, they have.
And they see the importance of running a ladies' team, or women's team as they're now called. But yeah, it took me away from business and gave me a hobby, I suppose, an interest outside of work. Yeah. And again, I think that's really important for entrepreneurs, is to have an outside interest as well, not just
work. Yeah, it's interesting. I've sort of noted them. We'll sort of come back to towards the end. Now, so you're an entrepreneur, set up your business, got heavily involved outside interests, but those interests also include, have I got this right, investing in other businesses? Yeah. And so why? Why and what do you look for when before you decide to invest?
Well, I always like the Dragon's Den type style programs, and I'm not invested in that many, if I'm being brutally honest with you. But I've always worked on the premise, if I'm going to be, when I retire, I'm going to leave a legacy. I want to leave more than just my business. I want to get involved in many other different things. But I think that the main reason for that is because I think once you've run one business, as Hollywood Monster business, I think you can go and with me football experience as well, you can actually run pretty much any business. Okay. You can give...
The principle's the same, isn't it?
100% the same.
The principle's the same.
All the lessons I've learnt, and I've learnt some really expensive ones along the road, I can pass on my experience to young entrepreneurs. The mistakes that I've made over the years, I will stop them making the same mistakes. And I'm involved in a few different businesses now, not necessarily invested, but I'm investing my time as a non-exec kind of role. And my biggest, without doubt, my biggest USP as being a non-exec is my black book and is my experiences. My experiences of making mistakes that I don't want them to make the same again. And actually, it's a lot cheaper hiring me than making those mistakes.
I was speaking to Alan Layton, ex-CEO of Asda and Royal Mail, and he's got a lot of non-exec roles. And he said it's down to two things, product and people. You understand product and people, you can run any business.
Yeah.
And as long as you get that right, product and the people. Yeah. And he said his role...
I put technology in there as well. I think I always say it's the three.
Yeah.
And you mix all those together and you get a lot of problems, don't you? Yeah. and being able to navigate through those problems and foreseeing those problems comes from experience. Yeah. Comes from doing it before. Yeah. And I think that's where I can add maximum value.
What drives you?
Money.
Yeah.
Pride. Me and my girlfriend recently, she's into her values. She loves.
Yeah, she does.
doing all that sort of stuff, and and she keeps asking me, what is it that drives you? And it always comes back to money and pride. But there are lots of other drivers as well, of course. But they're my two top ones. And it's not because I'm greedy. I have no money saved. I spend everything. I live my life to the max. I love my life.
You definitely live your life to the max.
Yeah, and I love my life, and the more people that can come on that journey with me, the better. And I really do enjoy that.
Would you ever sell?
Sell this business? Yeah. I would not sell it for less than it's worth. That's for sure. Okay. I suppose the utopia is selling the business to the people that have got it where it's got to, and allowing me to go on and do other things. It's easy for me to sit in there and say I wouldn't sell it to somebody that's just going to completely change it to what it, who knows. But it's a bit like, I remember David Gold and David Sullivan selling Birmingham City to the Chinese. Everyone's saying, how dare they do that? Well, if I owned them and I was offered 3 times what it was worth or 4 times what it was worth, then I probably would do. I'd probably do the same. But I would like to think one day the people who have made it will be the owners of it, management buyout.
You've gone through the mill. You set up as an entrepreneur, so I'll ask you some couple of closing questions. But you've also led an organisation and scaled it and got through COVID, which really, as we've said, was an absolute nightmare. But you're over the other side. So just a couple of questions to finish off. For other leaders, would you have any tips on, as distinct from entrepreneurship?
Yes, there is a difference between entrepreneurs and leaders. As an entrepreneur, make sure you surround yourself in people that are better than you. So it's about people. It's about recognising what skill sets you haven't got, and just because you've started the business up doesn't mean to say that you are the best manager. As an example, you may not be the best FD. So you put those people in place to do those roles. So that would be my biggest. But also, as a entrepreneur or as a leader, having a plan. I think it's really important. You wouldn't drive to London without a map or on a sat nav, would you? You'd want to set your route. And the same thing applies in business, really. You can't foresee unknowns like the pandemic. But if you've got a route planned, and you have to make a diversion, then so be it. But having a route down on paper, I think, is really important. Understanding what you're up against, and have KPIs, have measurements in place along that timeline in order to set your store out, really, your stall out, and just keep looking in your reverse mirror to see where you've been and making sure that you're still on the right path.
How important do you think was mindset for you? Because, not only in the early stages of trying to build something, but again during COVID, mindset.
Yeah, I think, passion for me has to be, it's very lonely at the top. I want to say at the top. It's very lonely at the top of your business. It's very lonely. There's quite often not many people you can turn to for help or support. So actually, it's your inner self that gives you that support and that drive, and you just got to keep going. It's a little bit like on a road in the middle of nowhere in a snowstorm. You just got to keep going, and just keep believing in yourself. And if you've got that passion, that desire, and that want to get to the end, or get to where you want to get to, then it will happen. But if you're only want to do it if you've been a bit half soaked about it, or I'm not sure. I don't think that's enough to get through. You have to have that burn inside you. That's that real fire in your belly in order to get to where you want to get to. And that came from me when I was younger. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be like my father's employer. And for me that was nice big house, nice big cars. There's a lot of monetary stuff, but actually everybody around him loved him and everybody respected him. And
interesting.
And that was sort of my driver. That really, I wanted to be like him.
Well, look, it's been fascinating. We've discussed the issues, the problems, the challenges, but the opportunities that lie within running a family business. We talked about how strong you had to be in terms of leadership when COVID hit, and how you had to cope. I think the biggest giveaway for me was insight was doing something outside of your core business, because it gives you a different skill set. It puts you in a zone you're not comfortable with. I think the best point was you said it also put the business in a zone they weren't comfortable with. They had to step up, which is really a really good insight. You've talked about the importance of doing things outside because it gives you a fresh appeal. You've reinforced the importance of the environment, of sustainability.
Yeah.
You've talked about that actually business is business. We cited 3 things: people, product, and you added technology to it. You talked about the inner drive when it all looks hopeless. You've just got to keep going. You've just got to keep going.
Yeah.
And I think with 80% of the UK economy being service-led, I think you emphasise the need for being really customer-focused and making sure you do things your competitors don't do. And thank you very much for the tips around entrepreneurship and leadership. And you're an shining example of somebody who's built a business up from nothing, has put so much back into the city, which has served you well and which you have served. And hence the gong yesterday. So congratulations again.
I just want to add one more thing as well.
Course.
I think, a leader, just look at yourself. If you would not want to be led by that person, then you're not the right leader. So keep looking at yourself, making sure that your behaviours are that of a leader, and that you are that person that you would look to for leadership. Just use your mirror.
Yeah,
I think that's really important.
Well, Tim, I'm going to let you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
The rest of the day and bask in the glory of yesterday. I'm sure it was a fantastic day.
It was great. It was awesome, and it managed to make me cry a couple of times. So it brought tears to my eyes, which it's all driven by pride, which is one of my values that make me get out of bed in the morning. And there's nothing more prouder, is that the word? Than receiving that gong. And actually, I was really, really nervous when I stepped up to the mat. I was going, and do you know what?
And yet you go on stages all the time.
She knew so much about me, which, do you know what? The amount of people that get MBEs, it really hit me by surprise. She knew everything about Love Brum.
Wow.
And I was one of 60 yesterday, so how can she know and remember all that?
Extraordinary.
So I was blown away by. I've got a lot of respect for, obviously, the royal family, but the respect that actually I was important to her, not the other way around as well, and that was really nice to see.
Wonderful. Well, listen, keep smiling.
Yep.
And enjoy the rest of the day. And thank you very much for coming in after such a busy day yesterday and accommodating us.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Thanks.